What up, friends? I am alone and isolated. That's depressing. But today we're going to be reviewing the newest Damon Albarn project, The Nearer the Fountain, More Pure the Stream Flows. This is the second solo album of singer-songwriter Damon Albarn. Albarn is, of course, extremely prolific, being the voice behind many groups like Gorillaz, Blur, The Good, the Bad, and the Queen, you name it. He's always explored his melancholic side in those bands, however his solo stuff is when that side of him really comes to the forefront. While this album isn't as strong as Everyday Robots and there's not as many standout tracks, it is a very respectable ambient pop record that captures a lot of the somber beauty of his melancholic works. The title track is a pretty ethereal first impression with incredibly atmospheric synths and the huge presence of Damon's vocals. I like the subtle guitar that's kind of weaved in, giving the track almost a psychedelic vibe here and there. The vocals in general are haunting yet strangely beautiful in their own way, and I like how the instrumental just kind of grows and grows without bringing too much attention to itself. The dark journey angle that the lyrics are taking also complement the sort of somber and upbeat contrasting journey that's going on in the instrumental too. The Cormorant has a bit more of a beat to it, using a drum machine in a similar way that like Timber Timbre used on their last project. That dark bass fits Damon's more exasperated vocals, giving the track a sort of worn down feeling. The elegant piano gives the track a pretty delicate touch, however those cacophonous guitars that are going on in the background kind of bring them back down to earth a bit. The track has a bit of an erratic nature because of those guitars and their constant fluxing and flowing between the other instrumentals. The simple 3-verse format gives the track a kind of poetic nature, and the sort of poetic storytelling that's going on in the lyrics also meshes with that style really nicely. Royal Morning Blue is probably my favorite song on the album, and it probably is the one with the most presence, too. It's a totally different vibe compared to the other songs, yet it still has that sort of delicate imagery that ties it back into the record. It almost feels like a sequel to On Melancholy Hill from Gorillaz' Plastic Beach with how synth-focused it is. That chorus is anthemic without feeling over the top, and I just love how simple yet powerful this track is. That haunting outro just segues back into the rest of the record perfectly. The 3 instrumental tracks are alright. The addition of the brass is a nice touch and does set this album apart from a lot of Damon's other works. However, without the vocals, Combustion, I think, just is a bit too ambient for its own good. I'm thinking that it's a bit more chaotic compared to the other songs, kind of in a way like Cabaret Voltaire would do. However, I'm just not really digging it as much. In my opinion, it just doesn't hit as hard without Damon's vocals over it. Daft Waiter is a spacey and simple tune, yet a very effective one. I love the huge emphasis on the piano, feeling kind of like a Gorillaz-style ballad. Damon's vocals are great here, and those background synths are a sort of shimmering curtain to an pretty interesting look at sort of religion and martyrism and how a lot of times in specific religions and cultures, martyrism is sort of like this heroic and honorable sacrifice. It's a really interesting analysis on like human behavior and human culture, for better or for worse, in a curious yet a non-judging way. I love hearing the horns come back in a more fleshed out track with Darkness to Light. The slow bounce of the bass gives the song a pretty unique groove compared to all the other songs on the project, and Damon's vocals are complemented by this really well. It's hard to use bombastic brass as a background piece, however it was done in a very elegant and tasteful way here. I also love the contrast and complements with the darkness and light and the silver and blue sort of imagery in the lyrics. Essia is another instrumental track that largely has the same problems as the previous one for me. It does its job, however, it largely just kind of feels like filler with its repetitive synths, samples, and beat. I feel like if the whole album was instrumentals, tracks like these might be a bit more fitting. However, when a lot of the album has lyrics and we are getting used to Damon's vocal presence, it just kind of stands out in not the best way. The Tower of Montevideo is kind of a whimsical piece compared to a lot of the other songs on here, with that slick sax intro and the sort of quirky brass and ambient sounds. Damon's voice is actually pretty low-key compared to the instrumentals, but that contrast is also what keeps the song pretty interesting. There's some fun piano flourishes on the chorus, and the instrumental as a whole seems to have this sort of bittersweet sound to it. This is especially amplified by the outro lines of "I can hear music, I can hear footsteps, ghost of the empty room, Montevideo." I think it really captures Damon's wonder of this part of South America. Polaris really feels like the culmination of the record, with very triumphant sounding synths and vocals. It almost has like a Good, the Bad, and the Queen sound with its indie guitar flourishes, synths, and gradual build-up. By the time we get to the chorus, we're soaring to new heights, matching the lyrics of "See the birds that have been taken by the wind. They're not together now, they'll have to wait until tomorrow to see each other again." And has that sort of New Day's Dawn hopeful aesthetic to it, maybe coming off a tragedy or something like that. It fits as a sort of light at the end of the tunnel for the record. Particles is the last track on the project, and while it's not bad, I honestly feel like Polaris would have ended the album better. Going back to a more downcast song after the sort of uplifting outro of Polaris, it's a bit underwhelming, I have to say. It also feels a bit questionable tonally, too. The delicate acoustic guitar and piano are nice, but they don't really have the same impact as the previous track, and that goes true for Damon's vocal melodies, too. The Near the Fountain is another solid project in Damon's repertoire, exploring sounds that he's really only dabbled in previously. The aesthetic is pretty well established, and I really do like it in the angle of it's kind of like what Damon would do with a Björk album, or using her style or something like that, and it's also pretty fitting because it's largely about Iceland too. However, each individual song doesn't have much presence to them, other than maybe a select few songs, so it makes it hard to recommend over Everyday Robots. It's a bit too ambient for its own good at times, however the moods and beauty on display here still make it a worthwhile listen in its own right. Overall, I'm feeling a strong 7 for Damon Albarn's newest solo album. Of course, we do have to talk about album covers on the show, and I think this is a fantastic album cover. It has that like New Order album cover aesthetic to it, very Peter Saville, and Peter Saville is one of my favorite graphic designers and album artists, so that makes sense why I would like it. But I love the black and white photography on here, the text being in the middle of this huge imposing rock taking up most of the space. It's just chef's kiss. Of course, those were just my thoughts on the album. What do you guys think? Is this just yet another solid addition to Damon's catalog, or was it not as robust and engaging as you would have liked? Let me know. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Ring the bell if you want to be part of my stream. What? But until the next one, farewell.